Let's get going before they get out of it.
Pretty wobbly. No gal in there either.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I know his record in the House of Representatives, and I know what a fine senator he'll make. And I know how much we need him in the Senate of the United States. These progressive measures that have been passed over the period of the last 5 or 6 years have not just been passed just because they've been offered, not just because the President Kennedy was interested in them or President Lyndon Johnson. All that is ahead, we can see what is immediately ahead. The third step, an area in which action is urgently needed and where progress may be in sight, is in the extension of the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty to underground explosions. First, such extension would be an important restraint on the development of nuclear weapons by nations which do not now possess them. Testing is an indispensable initial step along the road to nuclear armament. If we can ban nuclear tests, not just in the air or the water or space, but also underground, it will be far harder for more nations to develop nuclear weapons. Second, an extension of the Test Ban Treaty to underground explosions would be concrete evidence to the rest of the world that the United States and the Soviet Union are moving to limit our two-party arms race. Why, they ask, should they themselves not make nuclear weapons when the United States has a nuclear weapon, when the Soviet Union has a nuclear weapon? Why shouldn't they go on and make nuclear weapons themselves when we continue to expand our own nuclear arsenal? By taking this kind of a step, we would in turn assure them that not only did we want to limit their nuclear capability, but we were in turn willing to limit our own. Only if we, the two great nuclear powers, ourselves, lessen the role and the importance of nuclear weapons, can we expect other weaker nations to do the same. And only if nuclear weapons do become less important can we hope in the long run that others, no matter what treaties we reach, will refrain from making or acquiring nuclear weapons. The present treaty, which allows underground testing, has forced each side, in protection of its own security, to engage in vigorous programs of underground testing. We do it here in the United States, and the Soviet Union does it. And the result has been uneasiness and fear in the rest of the world, that the two nuclear giants are preparing for a new round of scientific advances toward mutual destruction. That is why a full test ban treaty is so vitally important, and then why, if they are not brought under control, each such crisis might well become the last crisis for mankind all over this globe. The United States, therefore, should pursue with the greatest possible vigor every possibility of agreement to cease underground nuclear testing. Such an agreement may well contain risks, and those risks should be minimized. But we must also recognize that if nuclear weapons are not controlled, no man and no nation are truly secure. And in this effort, I suggest that we explore fully an agreement along the following lines. Recent scientific advances have made underground tremors and disturbances far easier to detect than before. Only the smallest tremors or explosions cannot be detected from outside a nation's borders, and recent underground tests by the United States and the Soviet Union have been monitored and identified outside our respective countries. It may be that only a very few inspections of suspicious underground disturbances would be needed to ensure our security against any clandestine tests. Each side, therefore, may agree, I've proposed, may agree to discontinue underground nuclear testing for a short, fixed period, perhaps 2 or 3 years. During that period, thank you very much. Father Costello. Father Costello, Brock Adams and John O'Connell, Scott Wallace, and Congresswoman Hanson, Congressman Meads, and ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be here. I'm very sorry that Father Fitter was not able to come today, but I'm glad that he's back in New York. We need every vote that we can get back there. I was very delighted to hear about Brock Adams' fine record here, and I couldn't believe it when we were up the mountain, to tell you the truth. The only thing I was thinking was how I was going to get off. I know all these stories have been written, isn't it marvelous that he climbed the mountain, but I wasn't thinking of climbing to the top of the mountain. I was thinking about one before I started, but once I started up the mountain, I was just, I hope. It's just how you get down from the mountain. And then when we got to the last 500 feet, which seemed to me very, very steep, in the United States, many people, many families who are still living in poverty. I don't think it's satisfactory where we still have people who cannot send their children on a university or a college study. We have to do much better here in our own country. And we have to do much better around the world because these people elsewhere around the globe look to the United States. They look to us for leadership. They look to us for direction, not just for financial aid, but the United States is their last best hope. When a family raises when a parent raises a family in northeast Brazil and realizes that out of every 10 children that are born in his particular village, 7 accept him. And I think people like Brock Adams and the Democratic leadership that you have here in the state the question was, when the war in Vietnam is over, what do I think that the United States should do in rebuilding that society there? I think that we should make a major effort in helping that part of the world, and I would hope that that the relationship that would arise out of the conflict that exists there at the moment, that the relationship between the various countries would become closer and more friendly, and that therefore, as President Johnson has said, that our efforts could be made to build a society through all Southeast Asia, even amongst those who are presently our adversaries. Yes? No. Well, I didn't say that. The question was whether the last spring it was reported that I said that Americans could or should be giving aid to the North Vietnamese by donating blood. I was opposed to it at that time, and I'm opposed to it at the present time. What I did say is that I would like to see a different kind of a society and a different kind of a world where it was possible to have a different relationship with the North Vietnamese and with other peoples around the globe, so that we concentrated not on killing people but on helping them. But I had at the present time, which I pointed out, I said that the only way that it could possibly be done would be when the United States government felt that it was in our interest to do it, and it was done through an international organization. I think that that should be our objective, and I hope the world will change to make that possible. But at the moment, I think that it would not only be against the interests of this country, but also very likely violate the laws of the United States. Well, that's a general question, and it's hard to give a general answer. There's some parts of it that I don't. You want to take me away?
Yeah, why don't you take one
all
more?
Right.
Take one more.
Could I just ask them some questions? Just
Yeah, all right,
just
good. He wants to ask you some questions.
So if I for just 2 minutes, I'd like to ask you about. I asked you about the draft. I'd like to ask you about about communist China, and how many of. I'd like to ask you about Vietnam, and I'll ask you 4 questions about Vietnam. We're doing at the present moment. How many are in favor of doing less, which would extend either to escalating the war along the lines? And how many support the policy that we're following at the present moment? And how many would be in favor of doing less than we are at the present time? I suppose those are really the 3 major questions. Now let me ask you about communist China. How many, I'll ask you 2 questions. How many feel that communist China should be invited to the disarmament discussions at Geneva? And then I'll ask you how many feel that communist China should how many think that communist China should be invited to the disarmament discussions that are being held at Geneva? And how many people would be opposed to that? And how many would be in favor of inviting communist China into the United Nations at the moment? Well, thank you very much. Inflation is very serious, and I think some of the losses that have taken place over the period of the last 6 or 8 months are very serious for many of our citizens, and I think that it would have been a better step and wiser if we had increased taxes before this, but in any case, I'm in favor of the increase of taxes. Does anybody clap for that?
Are you going to run for 1968?
1968. The reason I knew the year wasn't because I had it on my mind. The question was whether I'm going to run in 1968 for Senate.
Which one? Yeah.
I'm not going to run. Don't plan to run for any political office in 1968. I'm going to run in 1970 for the United States Senate in the state of New York. I'm going to support Johnson and Hoover Humphrey in 1968. If anything, do I feel that the Manila Conference will accomplish? It seems to me that I favor, number one, bringing China to the discussions at Geneva on the disarmament. I'm in favor also of inviting Communist China into the United Nations with the understanding that Formosa will also maintain its seat. Now, I think, to be quite frank about that, I academic at the moment, because I think even if we did invite them, that they refuse to come because of the fact that nationalist China would remain. But in any case, I think that the change in policy that we followed in the past should take place. I think that this is as good a time as ever. Our relationship with China is always going to be strained. There's never going to be a good time to do it. I think we should have discussions and negotiations with China. I think they should be increased. I think that more than the discussions that take place at Warsaw at the present time can be carried on. So I would be in favor of taking the step ourselves of saying that we would no longer oppose the admission of Communist China to the United Nations. In favor of the bill that's been proposed by Senator Dodd and by others, co-sponsored